Hey there, friends. The Movie Grader here. Ever heard of Anchor? Anchor gives you everything you may need in one place for free in order to make a podcast. It can be done right from your phone or computer. Anchor's creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great and it's ready for prime time. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard wherever podcasts are available. Platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and even Google Podcasts. Also, you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. To get started, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. Hello, and welcome to the Movie Grader and Friends podcast, the podcast made by a movie enthusiast for all you other movie enthusiasts. Sit back with a tub of popcorn as movies, both new and old, from cult classics to all-time favorites, blockbusters, and award winners get discussed and reviewed. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Movie Grader and Friends podcast. I am Billy, the Movie Grader, and this episode is actually a solo mission. No guests this time, just me. In this episode, I will be covering the new Lion King movie, which is a quote-unquote live-action remake of the 1994 classic. During this episode, I will talk about both versions, new and old, and what the old movie meant to me. Which version is better, which version did what better than the other, and I will also throw in some fun facts about the new Lion King movie. Assign the new movie a grade, and then finally tell you what movie I will be covering next. Phew, alright, let's go. The new Lion King movie is directed by Jon Favreau and stars Vitello voicing Scar. I hope I did not butcher that name. John Oliver voices Zazu, James Earl Jones reprising his Mufasa role, Keegan-Michael Key voicing Kamari, Seth Rogen voicing Pumbaa, Billy Eichner voicing Timon, Donald Glover voicing Simba, and Beyonce voicing Nala, to name just a few from a lion's share-sized cast. The new version was released on July 19th, 2019. If you're somehow unfamiliar with the story of The Lion King, IMDb's synopsis of The Lion King plot is as follows. After the murder of his father, a young lion prince flees his kingdom only to learn the true meaning of responsibility and bravery. Before I talk about the new movie, let me back up just a second and let me talk about my memories surrounding the 1994 version, because it is kind of important to me. Summer of 1994 was really memorable for me, with both good and bad memories. Of course, The Lion King was released back then on June 24th, 1994, and I just was dying to see the movie. I had a huge desire to see The Lion King when it dropped, and all of my other friends got to see it before I did, and I had to wait for what seemed like an eternity to see it. It was not fun. Anyways, about the new movie, it's pretty much shot for shot and line for line the same as the original. So you can't really, badmouth it, because the old version was such a classic and it's timeless. And the new version actually did affect me in some similar ways as the old one did. Because the new one carries with it the same powerful score as you heard back in 1994, and it evokes many of the same memories that came along with the 1994 version. The new film did squeeze a few tears from me, I must admit. Back in 1994, while watching the original, my Grandpa Tony's death was still fresh in my mind because it was the first family death I ever had to deal with. And, a spoiler, Mufasa's death really hit me hard because of it. The stampede scene in the new version was just as intense, if not more intense, even though you knew it was coming. The realism of it was pretty insane. There were a few scenes that were done better in the original and a few scenes that were done better in the new version, surprisingly. Mainly the I can't wait to be king scene where Simba has that whole big musical number in the original animated version, and it was quite the spectacle. He was jumping around on all the animals, and especially on the giraffe's head, as the giraffes got into a big circle, and it was a pretty big spectacle on screen back then, and it was a pretty big musical dancing, I guess, number, what you would call it. The new version, since the animation is so super realistic, the animals can't really behave like that. You won't see Simba jumping around a giraffe or jumping on any other animal. He simply just walks around and sings. Hakuna Matata, actually, I thought was actually slightly better in this version of The Lion King, in the newer version. Timon and Pumbaa are voiced by Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen. And Billy Eichner, he kills it as Timon, actually. He'll have you laughing, and some of his lines were different than the original, which was a good change, and it was welcomed. It was funny. I enjoyed it, and Seth Rogen was perfect as Pumbaa. They will make you laugh, in different ways that the original one did, and that was a good change. It was fun to see. It was fun to watch. It had the whole audience laughing. It was a lot of fun. And the main thing with the new version is the incredible CGI. I thought some of the scenery was real, and the animation was just second to none during the scenes where you would see a waterfall, and like the water just looked so real. You would think this movie was actually shot with like a film camera, but instead it was all done on computer. It's pretty jaw-dropping. Animation at this point is, I really honestly, I don't know how it can get any better. It looked very realistic to me, and it's 1 minute you thinking you're watching a lion documentary on Nat Geo, and the next minute the animals talk, and then suddenly it tricks you into believing that animals can actually talk because it's so real, and you forget that nothing on screen is actually real. It's pretty amazing. As for which version was better overall, this is kind of a hard question to really answer. The original is no doubt a classic and will be the version people will think of first if somebody were to bring up The Lion King. The original is also so good it is almost unfair to compare the film to the new version because, honestly, it's basically the same movie with a fresh coat of paint. It's pretty hard to judge them both because they're very similar. Just one looks different than the other. It's just, your mouth will be on the floor because everything just looks incredibly realistic, and I can't stress it enough. It's something you got to see. It is, the animation alone is worth the price of admission. Go see it. Do not miss this. I got to see it on a beautiful Dolby Theater screen where, it's in 4K and the images were just crystal clear, and it was just quite the experience that's not to be missed. I dug up some Lion King fun facts on IMDb, and I thought I would share with you just a few of them. One of them is that The Lion King is Jon Favreau's second live-action Disney movie, based on a Disney animated movie after directing The Jungle Book back in 2016. Another fact is that Benedict Cumberbatch turned down the role for Scar. I thought he would have done great. The movie is frequently referred to, and it's quite wrongly, referred to as a live-action film, despite not having a single living thing, human or otherwise, actually appearing on screen in it. Jeremy Irons also expressed interest in reprising his role as Scar, but he ended up not doing it. Billy Eichner, who voices Timon, and Seth Rogen, who voices Pumbaa, recorded their lines together, much how Nathan Lane, Timon's original animated counterpart, and Ernie Sabella, Pumbaa's original animated counterpart, did so in the 1994 animated film, as well as in its direct-to-video DVD sequel and midquel. The hyenas Shenzi, Kamari, and Azizi are named after the Swahili words for savage, mighty, and moonlight, respectively. Kamari and Azizi were originally named Banzai and Ed in the 1994 animated film, but were given African names for this film. And honestly, I thought Shenzi, Kamari, and Azizi were better than Ed and Banzai. Just gotta say, they were funnier and I enjoyed them more. James Earl Jones, Hans Zimmer, and Elton John, and Tim Rice are the only people who worked on the original animated film that reprised their respective roles as the voice of Mufasa, the composer of the film, and the songwriters. This is John Oliver's second live-action adaptation of an animated feature, after having worked on the Smurfs live-action films as Vanity Smurf. I've never heard of Vanity Smurf. I never saw the Smurf movies, but he did a great job as Zazu, and I really enjoyed his work in this one. Billy Eichner did not have to audition for the voice of Timon. Jon Favreau happened to be a fan of his and suggested the thought to Eichner's agent, who told him about it, and he accepted it in a heartbeat. Billy Eichner, honestly, he steals the show in this. He's so good. He's also worth the price of admission. Him and Pumbaa, voiced by Seth Rogen, will have you laughing. Again, I can't stress that enough. They did a fantastic job, and yeah, they pretty much steal the show. And the final fun fact from the new Lion King movie is that at age 86 at the time, James Earl Jones is the oldest of the cast. He was 63 when he did the voice of Mufasa in the 1994 version of The Lion King. That will do it for fun facts. The grade I would assign for this movie, the new Lion King remake, would be a B. And coming up on next week's episode is Quentin Tarantino's 9th film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It opens July 26th, 2019. It is, of course, directed by Quentin Tarantino, and it stars Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie, Al Pacino, Kurt Russell, Dakota Fanning, and the late, great Luke Perry. Rest in peace. Per IMDb, it is about a faded television actor and his stunt double striving to achieve fame and success in the film industry during the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969 Los Angeles. I am very much looking forward to it, and honestly, I already have my ticket. It sounds like a lot of fun. Please find me on Instagram and Twitter at The Movie Grader, and please visit the website, www.themoviegrader.com, for my review of The Lion King, as well as other movie reviews. And please like and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Also, what would really, really help, and it's super important, please tell your friends about the podcast. The Movie Grader and Friends podcast is available on most podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and basically anywhere you get your podcasts. Hakuna Matata, and thank you for your time. Please email themoviegrader@gmail.com with any comments or questions, and then see you next week with my review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Thank you very much.